It's no secret Canadian snowbirds haven't been flocking to South Florida lately. President Trump's immigration rules and tariffs have caused controversy in Canada.
Florida is in the spotlight. Now, AAA says the Sunshine State claimed 4 of the top 5 holiday travel destinations, with South Florida taking number 2 and number 3. But there's a group of tourists staying away. New data shows travel from Canada has dropped sharply, and more Canadians are packing up and leaving Florida for good.
What happens when an ally doesn't retaliate, doesn't announce sanctions, doesn't make a speech, just quietly disappears? In less than 2 years, Florida lost an estimated 280,000 jobs and more than $52 billion in economic activity, not to a hurricane or a pandemic, but to a political rupture that turned tourism into a weapon and trust into collateral damage. As Canadians, once the backbone of Florida's winter economy, simply stopped coming, collapsing a system that had funneled $38 to $42 billion a year into the state and leaving some snowbird-dependent counties with winter occupancy down more than 40%, vacancy rates rivaling the financial crisis, and local budgets imploding as tourist taxes fell by as much as half, forcing school cuts, frozen infrastructure projects, and drained emergency reserves. The trigger wasn't a single policy, but a convergence. Tariff threats, confrontational rhetoric framing Canada as economically subordinate, and growing border anxiety fueled by reports, rare or not, of heightened screenings and entry denials, enough to make retirees with fixed incomes, healthcare needs, and property ties decide that uncertainty was unacceptable. A perception confirmed by airline data showing Canadian carriers slashing Florida winter capacity by double digits and redirecting planes to Europe, Mexico, and Asia, where demand didn't wait, it replaced. The consequences cascaded fast. An employment shock that wiped out hotel staff, restaurant workers, healthcare support services, real estate agents, and contractors, most permanently, while foreign-owned property listings in some Florida counties surged over 70% as Canadian owners liquidated rather than returned, softening prices and eroding tax bases. And here's the detail policymakers missed. The money didn't vanish, it moved. Between $27 and $30 billion a year was redirected within 18 months into Canadian provinces and non-U.S. destinations, boosting domestic winter occupancy, stabilizing healthcare utilization, expanding retirement housing, lifting provincial tax receipts, and drawing increased investment from Canadian banks and pension funds away from U.S. tourism-dependent real estate toward politically neutral, predictable jurisdictions. This wasn't emotional or temporary. It was calculated. Surveys now show most former snowbirds no longer view travel to the United States as neutral or predictable. And once healthcare, housing, and social networks are rebuilt elsewhere, reversal becomes unlikely, no matter who wins an election. Florida's growth model magnified the damage, optimized for seasonal foreign capital rather than resilience, leaving no backstop when goodwill withdrew and triggering a feedback loop of service cuts, declining quality, shorter stays, and further demand loss that pushed workers out of the state entirely. Buried in regional planning forecasts is the number that explains why this may already be permanent. A projected long-term shortfall of more than 160,000 seasonal residents baked into models extending 15 years forward, driving cuts to school enrollment forecasts, shelved healthcare expansions, downgraded transport demand, and retiree housing projections slashed by over 40% in some coastal counties. Not ideological assumptions, but mathematical ones. The trade war was meant to project strength, but it exposed a deeper vulnerability. In a globalized economy, power rests on trust, predictability, and respect, and when those collapse, markets don't protest, they withdraw. Florida didn't lose its winter economy because Canadians were angry. It lost it because they recalculated risk and walked away, leaving behind a permanent demand hole, a warning to the rest of the country, and a question that still hangs unanswered. What other invisible relationships are holding the U.S. economy together, and how many can vanish before anyone notices?